All right, let's cover today's PA. Today is June 4th, 2026. So we're going to start marking things out 15 minutes before market open. And we're just going to analyze what I saw and the bias I created. Here on the 4-hour, it's clear that we are rebalancing this 4-hour gap. We're sweeping out this sell side liquidity. On the way down from midnight open, we swept out all this previous liquidity to the left of us, all this LRL that was stacked previously. We're rebalancing this 4-hour gap, and now what midnight left behind was this unmitigated 1-hour bearish gap. You can see how this gap was never tapped into, and so that's telling me that we're likely going to be short time bullish. So currently we're rebalancing this range, and I'm anticipating for price to first trade higher before it has any reaction, whether it chooses to now trade lower. And that's one thing we don't know. What is price going to do after it taps this 1-hour bearish gap? See, we are only reacting to the data we see. We're not anticipating any future movements. What I'm seeing currently is that this 4-hour gap got rebalanced. We swept higher time frame sell side liquidity, and we're likely going to start trading higher until this 1-hour gap gets mitigated. So this 1-hour bearish gap becomes our higher time frame condition, where if we can close above it, then we're likely going to deliver to these draws over here. But if we trade into it and get internal structure to the downside, then I could see us remanipulating this low, right? So that is the higher time frame bias I got from that. And internally, I would want to look for a long into this 1-hour bearish gap, dropping down to the 15-minute. So you guys can see we have this 15-minute gap that opens up after rebalancing this 4-hour bullish fair value gap. So this now becomes my internal condition. If this 15-minute gap holds, then I'm convinced we're going to trade to this 1-hour bearish gap and likely deeper towards this 1-hour BPR gap, right? This was a 1-hour gap that got inversed, and it's the smaller gap inside of this bearish 1-hour gap. That's what that is, or you could just see it as the 1-hour bearish gap. Now, I want to add more confluence to this setup. So what I'm seeing is we have internal equal highs here. We have this intermediate high towards the 1-hour bearish gap, as well as this intermediate high. Not only that, but how I said previously, we're midnight open and completely dump without manipulating higher. You guys can see this is going to be the higher time frame key open, where we open price, deliver lower, and now what I'm anticipating for is for price to now start pushing higher and then closing bullish. What that did was it left a very overextended bearish leg, so this is going to be the higher time frame bearish leg. So I mark my fib from the swing high to the swing low, and it gives us some fib levels. We have equilibrium here, which is right above the intermediate high. We have OTE, which is sitting next to this resting intermediate high as well, and all of these exist inside of this 1-hour bearish gap. So if this 15-minute gap holds, I am very convinced that we are going to deliver to not only these internal draws being the equal highs, but at a minimum this intermediate high sitting inside of this 1-hour bearish gap. And then from here, we either get another condition to continue pushing price higher, or we then get bearish momentum to then send price lower. So let's see how price reacts off open. This is going to be the 625 candle. This is your 629 candle. And let's skip one more candle. So this was the candle that manipulated these internal lows. This also put in a bullish SMT with ES, because ES was actually trading well above this gap still, while NQ was targeting these lows. So ES is sitting up here above the 15-minute gap, highly respecting it, and NQ is the one to put in an internal SMT inside of this 15-minute gap. Not only that, we had another condition here being this 5-minute bullish gap, bullish SMT out of that gap. If you guys have been paying attention to the fib, there's also a range that exists in here as well. So if I was to mark from the swing low to the swing high, we see that NQ actually tapped OTE of the range here, put in a bullish SMT with ES, and not only that, it gave us a very large 1-minute rejection block. This here was my entry, and what I wanted was to now see the next candle open bullish and to take me into this trade, and my targets going to be these equal highs and this intermediate high sitting inside the 1-hour bearish gap. So I put my limit order there, targeted this intermediate high. Next candle took me in here. I want to show you guys what ES was looking like at the time of this rejection block here. You guys can see this is the low that NQ swept but ES was still highly respecting this gap, well above price here. So while NQ was trading lower to manipulate these lows, ES was nowhere near these lows, and it was instead holding well above this gap. Also, it looks like this 15-minute gap gets inverse, but what you're not paying attention to is that this is a 1-minute time frame, and this is a 15-minute gap. So if I were to go to the 15-minute time frame here, we actually respected this gap and never closed a body below this gap. So this was a Judas swing off open. What that is a very strong volatile move off open, where price manipulates and then instantly delivers to the opposite direction. And one thing to pay attention to is that we did have a 4-minute bearish gap here. So as soon as price tapped this 4-minute gap, I did go break even on this trade, and it instantly delivered to my draws. Now, after delivering to this 1-hour bearish gap, we now want to see if we're going to have continuations higher, or if price is going to reverse, given that this is a higher time frame 1-hour bearish gap. You guys can see we're getting some strong rejection out of this bearish gap, and what I can anticipate for is for a reaction lower to manipulate these lows, and then a potential move higher. We have a 3-minute bullish gap here. So if this is to get inverse, this would be a solid setup to deliver price lower. Why? Because we still have this intermediate low here, and we just put in another intermediate low here. We are now delivering from a higher time frame 1-hour bearish gap, and internal conditions would be any smaller time frame gap getting disrespected. Let's see how price reacts. We inverse this gap here. You could have put a short position in there, targeting this intermediate low as your draw, and price ends up delivering. Anyways, I hope this video helped, and if you have any more questions, just ask us in the Discord.